Hello, welcome. Episode 12 of The Outside Fence. I'm your host, as always, Tristan Heffernan, and with me is my Melbourne racing expert, Stewart Brown. Balls races are really starting to hot up. We've got Flemington, a massive meeting coming next week, but we're going to look at Moonee Valley straight away. Tonight, we're actually going to look at 4 races tonight, and we might even pop back up to Sydney as well, so huge show. Do you come in, how was it reviewing the tapes? Was a win under your belt to review them, or was it hard work?
No, it was a winning day for me. So it was a pleasure watching a few of the races there, which was nice. And managed to finish with the nose in front. So that's always a positive for the day.
Beautiful. Now, whenever you win, I always assume that you've worked out the track. What can you tell us about Moonee Valley? We had some concerns going in on how that inside 5 metres was going to play after the bog 2 weeks ago. In the end, I personally thought the inside was a little bit shifty, but it seemed to even up as the day went on. Was that how you saw it?
Yeah, it pretty much was. The track started off a good 4 as we're accustomed to in Victoria, and then was upgraded to a good 3 after race 2. As mentioned, I thought the track played excellent. There was that concern going into the meeting. It was that 5 metres of fresh ground on the inside. After the meeting 2 weeks ago, but usually with the rail in the true position, it's probably plays the best Moonee Valley does. Horses generally can come from the back and make wide runs, and that was pretty much the case from race 1 right through the day. As you did mention, possibly sort of the inside wasn't absolute A1 ground, but I tend to, after races 5 and 6, I was sort of thinking that, particularly when Showmanship sort of looped them and then in the 1,000-metre race, they sort of angled away from the inside. But, yeah, those last 3 races, it seemed to definitely even up a bit, and horses were able to perform well closer down towards the fence. So, yeah, I've found it hard to find excuses for any horses based on how the track played.
Excellent. That's what we like. That makes our job a bit easier, trying to work out what's going to happen with these horses going forward. And a number of these are going to feature in the carnival, so we thought we'd look at 4 races tonight. First of all, we're going to start with the Feehan, and well, it was a pretty big upset here in Humidor, the old boy getting up at big odds. Did you see this coming, Bowles?
I didn't. It's sort of after the race, I suppose. It's not unthinkable that he could win, but he's not the sort of horse I'm going to find given the form he was in, and he was first up and sort of hadn't done anything for a while. It wasn't the strongest Feehan I've ever seen, and he's managed to get the job done.
All right, let's pause to start with. Let's talk about the tempo here, because we had, in these weight for age races, we seem to have a few ducks and drakes in the media. We had a bit of talk that they were going to ramp this up a bit, but that didn't eventuate, did it?
No, it didn't. They've only gone at a slow speed here, and then sort of from about the 600, you'll see, or even a bit early, you'll see a couple of horses from the back start to take off, given that slow speed. That's when the speed in the race really ramped up. And it became a race.
Yeah, okay, let's look just at the map where we've paused it here. Did this sort of go as you expected, or did anyone particularly advantaged or disadvantaged by where they settled?
No, it's pretty much exactly what I thought. I thought maybe Streets of Avalon might attempt to lead, but they were happy enough sort of sitting outside Sir Coney. But yeah, pretty much the positions all horses are in at the moment, that's where I expected them to be.
Okay, beautiful. We'll let it roll. You mentioned before when they take off, this race really changes complexion about the 700. Let's talk about the favourite in the race, Surprise Baby, to start with here. With this horse Mohammedaeus taking up off its back, do you reckon that got him going a little bit earlier than he wanted to, or maybe it played into his hands?
Yeah, possibly a little bit earlier than he wanted to, but I don't think it sort of made too much of a difference to the result. Surprise Baby, obviously, as we know, is a strong stayer, so he's got that sort of long run in him. Now, he was first up from last year's Melbourne Cup, and there's obviously plenty of hype about the horse through the week. He's made a very good return here, even though he has run favourite and been beaten. I think if you're on long term for the Melbourne Cup or your connections of the horse, you'd be quite happy with the return. As mentioned, he's made that long run, which should be a good fitness builder for him. And he's only just gone down in the finish. And afterwards, the trainer and even pre-race said the horse did sort of have plenty of improvement to come as well. So, all good with Surprise Baby.
Beauty. We'll just identify a few here. We've got this pause before we run it to the finish. The winner there, Humidor's back in the green. Surprise Baby's in between runners out wide there, the grey and pink colours. That's Makybe Diva taking off in the blue. Harbour Views is there in the blue and yellow stripes, waiting to go back to the inside for his run. Initially, I thought maybe he was a bit disadvantaged by that there, Balls, as I'm going to run it now. But on reflection, he probably had every chance.
Yeah, well, personally, I've marked that he did have every chance. He's sort of, obviously the inside's opened up as Sir Coney's drifted away from the fence, and he's had to quicken to take that run. Now, he's run the fastest sectionals of the race between the 600 and the 200, and as you'll see towards the finish, he just sort of dies on his run a little bit. Now, he was first up from a few runs through the winter, so maybe just the fitness has given way a little bit at the finish there. But once again, I'd be quite happy with his run as far as the connections go. He's a horse that has obviously had a massive rap his whole career since he debuted at Warrnambool, but and he's sort of just now, I suppose, trying to live up to those expectations. I still think the hype's probably a bit ahead of sort of what he's done or what he's capable of, but I think he'll go to the Underwood Stakes next, which is another weight for age race over 1800 at Caulfield, and that should give us another great guide on sort of how he's going and where he measures up this spring.
Yeah, it's not the first time he's run really fast splits from that sort of 600 to 200 range, is it? We saw before he went for a break, he did a similar thing at Caulfield and then knocked up the last little bit. Is any slight worries that he's not finishing off, or is that just a bit of a coincidence that's happened a couple of times now?
I think a coincidence. Like, he did pull up lame in that Caulfield run, so that was probably an excuse for him. He's an interesting horse because the majority of the runs in his career have been in very slowly run races, and particularly early in his career when he had that great winning record, it was just too good for them, and he had a better turn of foot than those lower class horses. Obviously, as he comes up in grade now, it gets a bit harder for him, but his actual career best run was in a fast run race at Moonee Valley. So I tend to think he's probably better suited in those fast run races because he's got the ability in those fast run races to sit close to the speed, and also he's got to still use that turn of foot that he's got. Weight for age racing can be difficult for him because it can be quite a tactical affair. Whereas if he gets into a handicap, they generally can run along in there, and that's where he could be to advantage.
Okay, so the last ones we've really got to talk about here are the two on paces, Sir Coney and Streets of Avalon. They seem to have had every chance here in front, and the stayers have been too strong for them.
Yeah, they have had every chance. Streets of Avalon's a horse that I've always had a huge risk on at 1600. And he's run pretty well. Like, it's sort of what you see is what you get with both horses. There wouldn't be much improvement in either of them at this stage of their preparations. They're very honest, sort of on-pace horses. They're generally a good benchmark for these sort of horses, I suppose, at this level. And I think a horse like Streets of Avalon will go back to 1400 metres now, which is more his sort of pet distance. And look, once he's hard and fit, he's generally pretty competitive in whatever he runs in.
Okay, this might be the one just to top him off nicely for a really fast 1400 next time. Before we move on, let's take a horse to follow from this. And what do you think about the strength of this form? Is this? We know a few of these horses are talking Cox Plates. Obviously, Humidor gets into the Cox Plate now, and Surprise Baby, they're maybe hoping to go that way on their way to the Melbourne Cup. Are we going to be finding this form at all in a Cox Plate, do you think?
I don't think so at this stage. Obviously, yeah, Surprise Baby well on track for the Cups. The fact Humidor won, obviously his next start will probably tell us a lot more as well, but the fact he won is probably a little dampener on the race. But even going into it, I didn't think it was sort of the strongest field of weight for age horses I'd seen. So, yeah, personally, I'll be a bit wary looking at this form sort of going forward for the rest of the spring.
All right, I think I'm with you on that. I was a little bit against Surprise Baby going into the race, and then I thought maybe the inside's a bit off, so I let him in there. But I think he ran about as well as could be expected when they're looking at a race twice the trip later in its prep. Let's go to the McEwen Stakes now. Now, this was won by a magnificent tried horse purchase, Vella. They only paid $22,000 for this horse in one of the English sales, and all of a sudden she's come out and obviously won the won the Sangster Stakes, and now she can add the McEwen Stakes to her resume. 1,000 metres. It looked like they were going to go like cut cats. Is that how it played out?
No, it actually didn't. They've actually gone at a fairly slow speed for this sort of level of horse at 1,000 metres. I suppose the start played a bit of a role in that. You see the horse that's currently in third position there in the sort of blue with the white and black checks, Witherspoon. It's a real 1,000-metre whippet, and it was sort of expected to lead this field. It didn't jump great, and so it got stuck in behind them, whereas an Ashlaw has ended up leading, and it's more, I suppose, maybe a 1,200-metre horse. So that's probably where the tempos come out of the race. But you'll see that Witherspoon, I suppose Damien Oliver has recognised that there is no tempo there, and he's sort of taken off soon after this spot and actually gone to the front. But added a bit of pace to the race. But, sort of overall it was a fairly slowly run race.
Okay, it's had to do a lot of work there, Witherspoon. So no surprise that it's knocked up after that. When we look at the map here now, Bella Vella ends up getting a beautiful trail. Any particular advantage or disadvantage horses you think here because of the map?
Well, Brooklyn Hustle has definitely settled closer than I thought. She's there in fifth position in the red colours. I thought I've had her probably a pair further back. I've probably had Rulership, who's back on the fence there in the red with the yellow sleeves. I thought he'd probably be up pretty much in the first 3 or 4 as well. But apart from that, it's sort of, and obviously Witherspoon leading, that was sort of where I had them mapped going into the race.
Okay, so Rulership was a little bit slow to begin as well, and his race was basically cooked there. I was very surprised to see him around the sort of $10 mark, considering what we've seen from him in his early runs this preparation. Any reason why we might have seen him that short, Bowles?
Well, he's obviously got a career of a fair few shorter SPs, and I suppose he's tied a little bit to Hanseatic, who was the favourite in the race. So there was probably that little bit of an anchor on his price that you couldn't sort of push him out too far. And he was on the week back up after a bit of an unlucky run at Caulfield last week, and the stable have form of running 3-year-olds in this race and performing well. So I suppose there was all those factors there that might have persuaded a few punters to go that way. But yeah, I was well and truly on your side with that. I gave it none.
Excellent. Okay, well, as I roll the tape here, we've got the eventual winner, Bella Vella's sitting third there in the green with the black cap. Ashlaw second, we spoke about him right there up on the speed. Brooklyn Hustle there in the red. And Hanseatic, which is the other horse, the other 3-year-old in the race that you mentioned who started favourite. He's back last there in the blue colours. Let's talk about Bella Vella, because she's got such speed that she's always looked at a horse that can she take a sit? That was sort of the question, because she does lead often in her races, but she proved here that she can.
Yeah, she's pretty much a bomb-proof type horse. She always jumps well from the gates, always puts herself in a position, and she's actually starting to get a bit of strength. She obviously won the Sangster at 1,200 metres, leading all the way to show that she can run 1,200. And here she sort of got pushed 3 wide, sort of down the side once Witherspoon took over and Ashlaw pushed off the fence. And she, I suppose on the point of the turn here, she looked at the mercy of Hanseatic and Brooklyn Hustle coming wider, who I suppose were known as the stronger horses. But yeah, she's been quite tough to the line here, wearing down Ashlaw just as they get to the line, and thankfully sticks her head out and gets the cash.
That's a good point. Brooklyn Hustle, she was, well, definitely within a length and a half of Bella Vella when they've straightened up. She's barely taken half a length off her, so full credit to Bella Vella. She wasn't stopping at all there. What do we make of Ashlaw? He's not a horse that really struck me as the type that's going to be poking his head out here in a McEwen Stakes. Is this a pox on the race that he's finished so close?
I don't massively think it is. Like 1,000-metre races, they're a bit of a different beast, and he did pretty much lead or was right on speed, and they didn't go super hard. So, but he's also a horse. He's a great Moonee Valley horse. He loves Moonee Valley, and any time sort of he gets there, he doesn't matter the level he runs at. He's always competitive or thereabouts. So I don't think it's a huge, despite him having a huge SP going into the race, I don't think it's a massive shock that he has run well here, just given the race shape.
Okay. The horses, I guess, that everyone were excited to see, Brooklyn Hustle off that first up win and Hanseatic. They've both, I say they didn't take much ground off Bella Vella, but I think that's probably more a tick to Bella Vella than a knock on their run, because they've both run home in really quick sectionals. Are we still looking to stay with these horses moving forward, Balls, or have you got a little chink in the armour on either of them?
Yeah, both horses do have a little chink to me, but I'm not against sort of backing them in the right race. Now, you mentioned Brooklyn Hustle, and I mentioned before how she settled a lot closer than I expected, and maybe that has dulled her finish somewhat. Like, she's run the second fastest split between the 400 and 200 of the meeting, but then only the 18th fastest last 200. So that really shows that she sort of, I suppose, peaked for that 400 to 200 split and then died on her run somewhat that last 200. Now, I don't know whether that's the fact that she has settled so close has dulled her finish a little bit, and she's better like ridden a bit colder, like a pair further back. And also, I suppose she had to make the running into the race a bit coming wide, whereas her first up win, obviously in lesser class but more dynamic, was where she was buried on the fence and took those sort of tight late runs. I think that sort of suits her a lot better than making sort of that wide sweeping type run.
Yeah, okay. We did mention that in a takeaway once, actually. Just be wary of those horses smothered up, and when they have to go to a race when they've got to come out into the breeze and make their runs. So a little tick there. And Hanseatic, what do we make of him?
Yeah, I think he's run well on his return. He's obviously settled well back and had to make that wide run, sort of the widest run in the race. He's run the fastest last 600, the second fastest last 400, and the fourth fastest last 200 of the meeting. So it's sort of hard for him to have gone much better, I suppose. To me, though, the jury is still out a bit on this horse. Like he's had those two runs at 1200 as a 2-year-old where he had every chance in the Blue Diamond and couldn't run down Tagaloa, despite looming as the winner, and then obviously failed in the Golden Slipper on a wet track. He's the sort of horse I want to see at 1200 again. To me, he's got a similar type of profile almost to a Brooklyn Hustle, where they're possibly dynamic 1,000 metre sprinters and can sort of stretch 1,200, but at this sort of level, they're probably more suited to 1,000 metres. So, Hanseatic's definitely a horse I want to see again before I sort of decide how far I think he can go this spring. Okay,
he did have a huge boom on him last year as a 2-year-old, but the gloss has just come off a little bit. Now, to my eyes, we see Fine Danes close up their rulership, but is that the race, the top 4 going forward?
Yeah, I think so. Probably take out Ashlaw, like he'll be thereabouts, but he's sort of a hard horse to back, I suppose, at this level. But a lot of those horses will go to the McEwen Stakes, which is on in about 3 weeks' time, which is 1,000 metres at Moonee Valley again. Obviously, the field will be a bit tougher. I know Anders is coming down for it from Sydney, who's obviously a very fast 3-year-old, but a horse like Bella Vella will be very competitive in that race, I think. Like, she can sort of sit up on speed, probably tag Anders, and I'd be very surprised if she's not the finish in a race like the Moya.
Beautiful. That'll be a ripper. The Moya with the very exciting Anders coming down. Let's jump over now to the Atlantic Jewel for the 3-year-old fillies. I had a love-hate relationship with Atlantic Jewel personally, Balls. I know she was one of your favourites, like most Mark Kavanagh horses were back in the day. No Atlantic Jewels in this one, though.
No, I don't think so. We probably only see one every 10, 15 years maybe. But, as you see, 3-year-old fillies here, they have gone at a fast speed in this race, unlike, I suppose, the first 2 races we've watched, and they've got home quite slowly. I suppose there's a couple of stats that you can compare to the Showmanship race, which was also run over 1,200, that we'll show a bit later. This race here, they've run about a half a second quicker overall. Half length quicker overall compared to the Showmanship race. But given the speed they've gone here and got home slowly, as opposed to the Showmanship race, they've actually got home about 13 lengths faster the last 600 in the Showmanship race. So that sort of gives you angle on, I suppose, how differently both races were run, and sort of, I suppose, just how slowly they've got home here.
Yeah, that's a really big difference. Let's look at the map here. Dirty Thoughts has done a bit of work to get outside the leader. Is there anything we straight away we're bonusing or being a bit harsh on, given on where they settled?
Well, knowing how quick they've gone, and Dirty Thoughts is a horse I think we gave a sex change to last time we spoke about. But
apologies for that.
Knowing that she sat outside the leader, on this fast speed. I think there's plenty of merit, and being sort of right in the finish, there's plenty of merit in her run. A horse like River Knight in those green colours in about fourth position there out wide. It's sat wide, no cover the race, so I suppose it can be forgiven, but it's a horse I think is a big doubt at 1,200 as it is, so there's probably not huge options for her at this level this spring. But, outside of that, the sort of, I suppose, pretty much all horses got their chance, as seems to be a custom in a fast run race. It sort of sorts out the wheat from the chaff, so to speak, and sort of the better horses have really separated themselves from the pack here.
Okay, we might have to run this race twice because a fair bit to keep an eye on. First of all, let's talk about the winner though here, Night Raid. They're in the light blue colours. Now, I don't know a lot about this horse, but it seemed like a pretty strong win to me.
Yeah, it was a very good win. It's a horse going into the race I thought was a possible leader, but it's settled just on the back of the speed there now. I found the horse extremely hard to rate going into the race. It only had 2 starts and it had one run as a 2-year-old. It ran 4th at Flemington at big odds. Then it resumed recently at Tatura of all places, and won a maiden there by as far as you kick your hat. Running great sectionals for the day, beating nothing pretty much, but sort of rated very well. So I suppose you had to think it would take a bit of a leap forward, and also trust that it wasn't just sort of a flat track bully beating up nothing at Tatura. But yeah, it certainly showed there's a bit of bottom to this horse, and it's just not a horse that can lead and win. It sat off the speed there, a fast speed, sat close to the fast speed, and taken a run and was too strong in the finish.
Yeah, I was surprised. Was it surprising it was so firm in the market, given it was coming off a Tatura run?
Not massively, because I know the stable had a massive opinion of the horse. They love talking it up. And Mick Price, the Mick Price stable is one that generally are pretty straight down the line when they talk about their horses. So generally, if they do talk one up, you can sort of take that on board. But yeah, I suppose it wasn't sort of. I suppose it was backed early, but as far as just pretty firm in the market, sort of around race time. But yeah, as I said, very impressive win.
All right, let's go back to watching a few horses at once, as we've done before on the show. Dirty Thoughts, obviously, we've talked about being outside the lead, was excellent. We've got a few others to look out. Maybe we point out Aidensfield, Agreeable, and if you've got any other little sneakies there for us to follow here.
Yep, so Aidensfield is about third last there in the brown colours, and behind it is Agreeable, a horse we've spoken about on the show before. And I suppose another one that's sort of beaten 5 or 6 lengths in the race but didn't have a huge amount of luck on the home turn is another horse from the Mick Price stable, Odium, which is in sort of the yellow and blue colours. It's just a little bit obscured at the moment, just in front of Aidensfield on the outside there. So they're horses that all make ground and are probably worth keeping an eye on in this replay.
Okay, let's go first with Aidensfield in the colours of the Mighty Desperado there. Is there a bit to work with here with this horse?
Yeah, I definitely think so. She was a horse. There we go, trying to give me the sex change again. She was a horse who won 2 from 2 as a 2-year-old, and I was very impressed with both wins. Now, she only had one jump out going into this, and obviously it was a fast run race as well, so I'd assume she's going to derive plenty of benefit out of this run. She sort of made that wide looping run, and yeah, derived plenty of benefit out of this run. She can get to sort of 1,400, 1,600, and she's right on target for 1,000 guineas. Okay,
we see Agreeable. This is a horse that you pointed out for us a week or two ago in the white and red. She had the back of Aidensfield, but hasn't really taken much ground off it in the run home there.
No, she was just a run, I think. I think she's run well again. There's no massive issue with her run, but yeah, as you said, she followed Aidensfield through, and you'd say she had every chance. Now, possibly staying at 1,200, last run was 1,100, only going up to 1,200 was sort of against her a little bit. She might be looking for 1,400, 1,600 already. I'm not going to sack her off that run, and I'm happy to have another look at her at 1,400, and then I suppose we'd probably get a true guide on how she's going. Just back on Aidensfield as well, and I mentioned how fast they've gone in this race and got home slow. Well, Aidensfield, to give some kind of picture compared to the rest of the day, Aidensfield's run the fastest last 200 in this race, But if you look at it on a perspective over the whole meeting, it's actually only the 42nd fastest 200, last 200 of the meeting. So, this race definitely became a war of attrition at the end. And I suppose that's why you see the big margins in between the horses sort of back in the field.
Okay, so this pace usually means pretty solid form to follow, especially in terms of comparing each other. I'll roll the end there, we see Odeon in behind. What is it about Odeon's run that you like? Just the fact that there was not much luck on the home bend? What sort of race are we looking at for her?
It looked to be travelling into the race okay on the turn, and then copped a bit of interference from the winner, and sort of put it out in contention. I don't think it would have sort of been right up there with the other place getters in the race, but probably should have finished a couple of lengths closer given even luck. Now, I'd assume the horses that's raced here and finished in front of it have its measure here, but Odeon's sort of horse, if it drops in grade or finds a weaker race than this, then I don't think it's hopeless in that situation.
Okay, nice little hidden one to follow there. Odeon. Now, if you're still awake with us, balls, we're going on to race 4. Well, this is race 5. This is our 4th race on the show. This is a horse who you gave a really strong push for not too long ago when he won at Caulfield. This is the WA Galloper Showmanship. I've never heard... Well, to say never is a bit overboard, but for a horse that was even money, there were a lot of people prepared to tip against it. I know on the racing.com coverage, everyone seemed to be tipping Age of Chivalry at the prices, and in the end, Showmanship's absolutely kicked its head in here. Let's just pause this shortly after the start, though, because I think the map was the key to this race.
Yeah, it definitely was. I think the pot on Showmanship was that it was coming from 1,400 back to 1,200, and many people would have thought it's probably going to settle back in the last maybe 2 or 3. Age of Chivalry would have sort of 3 or 4 lengths on it, and that was sort of the angle they were taking. And plus, there was a bit of talk that Moonee Valley might be leaderish given that 5 metres of fresh ground, and it might not have been ideal to make a wide run now.
I'll jump in because I haven't been able to pause this like I wanted to, so we'll run it again, but let's just talk. It's jumped on Age of Chivalry's back here, which I don't think too many people would have tipped. Is that the key to the race?
It is. As soon as it, as you said, it didn't jump great, but as soon as it mustered through and found Age of Chivalry's back, I thought that was curtains for the race, to be honest. As I've mentioned previously, this horse, I'm quite enamoured with it, but as soon as it finds Age of Chivalry's back, and they've only gone at a sort of a slow tempo in this race, and Showmanship's shown in the past, he's got a booming finish on him off a slow tempo, can run some huge figures, so it was curtains for the opposition as soon as that was the case.
Yeah, far too good there, Showmanship. Speaking of figures, what did he produce for us on terms of a meeting basis? He's have to have run the fastest somewhere.
Yeah, well, he's run the second fastest last 600 and 400 of the meeting, and the fastest last 200. So that shows that we obviously saw last start, he's got strength through the line at 1,400. This was only 1,200. He can easily go back up to 1,400 in a race like the Rupert Clark, and he's going to be unbelievably hard to beat in that race.
Excellent. That's going to be a ripper race, the Rupert Clark. Now let's just run this again. We'll have a look at Age of Chivalry at the start. Did he miss the boat there in not trying to push forward and sit outside the leader?
He possibly did. He was possibly a bit too cute on the horse. Age of Chivalry is not really the horse who you want to be really cute on or ride a pretty race on or be in sort of a sit sprint affair. He's the sort of horse you probably want to roll along on speed. Like, he ran 2 of his best runs of his career were last year in the Rupert Clark and the Toorak, which were both fast run races, where he sat close to the speed and was placed in both. Here they've gone slow. He sat 1-1 and had to pop out. They're going that slow. And as mentioned, Showmanship's just got his back there. And I keep repeating myself, but it was curtains at that stage. On the vision, Age of Chivalry looks to be a bit disappointing. Like, it hasn't even run past the leader Felicia, who's a handy mare, but Age of Chivalry is a lot better horse than it. But I really think the pace of this race and the way it's sort of set up was massively against Age of Chivalry. So it'll go to the Rupert Clark as well. I don't think Showmanship's locked in there yet, but it looks the ideal race for him. But Age of Chivalry can run well in the Rupert Clark. I just couldn't see him beating Showmanship, barring obviously some bad luck.
Okay, Felicia wasn't a bad run, but had a pretty good run in front. I assume she goes to mare's grade now.
Yeah, there's plenty of sort of mare sprints around over the spring that she'd be eligible for, and obviously she's got a good racing style, so she can be competitive in those types of races.
Okay, and finally we'll touch on, being Tasmanians, we have to talk about Mandela Effect, who's close enough to our horse of the year if he doesn't win it. Big plans for Mandela Effect. I was a little bit disappointed in the run. Can you give me any excuses there?
Well, yeah, I don't think the slow tempo at 1,200 metres is sort of right up his alley, particularly against those horses. But, yeah, I agree. He's just run fairly at best, I'd say. To give, I suppose, an indication on sort of how slowly they have gone, Mandela Effect's actually run the 15th fastest last 200 of the meeting, but it's only the 6th fastest of the race. So that sort of shows how a lot of the best late splits of the meeting have come out of this race. And it wasn't a race shape that really suited him at all. But if they want to go to a Rupert Clark, obviously they're going to run into horses like Age of Chivalry and Showmanship again. So it's going to be hard to see him turning the tables. But as it's seen, he's been competitive in some sort of handy races in Victoria. So no doubt you'll be well placed by Scott Brunton. And I'm sure he'll pick up a win or two wise over there.
Yeah, a bit extra trip and a bit more tempo. We might see a bit of a different horse. That's a really good rundown by you there, Balls, of those 4 races at Moonee Valley. We did have a viewer request here from Jared from Gilston Bay. Big shout out to Jared. He does some real underground Twitter work. He's worth a follow. I can't remember his handle off the top of my head, but he wants us to take a look at the Concorde Stakes because he's taken Nature Strip in a promo, first and second, to get $2, and he's real happy with himself, mainly because he's back to loser and still got paid. Let's pull up the Concorde because this is a really interesting race to talk about, and again my pause button hasn't worked here, so we're going to have to go on the fly. I want to talk first about the trials because everyone wants to tell you how good Nature Strip trials. It's the bloody fastest horse in Australia, possibly the world. Of course it's going to trial well. How can that possibly give us any indication on the horse coming into a race like this?
No, I totally agree with you. I think I'd tweeted a couple of times when there was mass fanfare and his price was shortened for the Everest and all that sort of how would you possibly expect this horse would trial given he's just a complete bomb at those short distances. I think people just like talking the horse up. I think and the tab, possibly he's got the tab slot for the Everest, so probably the tab PR machine got rolling a bit there too. Okay.
That all said, he's been beaten here fairly and squarely by Gytrash, not for the first time either. Now people seem pretty happy just to forgive this and say he'll be right once the Everest rolls around. I'm not so sure. What do you think?
I'm probably not as hard on him as you are. Obviously, Gytrash beat him in the Lightning first up last prep over 1,000 metres as well. And he's actually beaten Nature Strip the only 2 times that they've met now. Now, obviously, 1,000 metres, it was a bit of a specialist distance. And I think the big thing in this race was that Ball of Muscle was in it. And it's obviously led and Nature Strip's had to sit outside it. I think Nature Strip's a far better horse when he's controlling, and particularly controlling, I suppose it doesn't matter what distance it is, 1,000, 1,100 or 1,200, but if he's controlling in front, I think that's massively his go.
Okay, is he going to be able to control once, I assume Ball of Muscle's not getting in the Everest? I saw someone mention that the connections of Gytrash should try and get Ball of Muscle in there. But we're going to hopefully we're going to see Anders and possibly another couple of fast 3-year-olds into the race. Can we go as far to say if Nature Strip doesn't lead the Everest, it can't win? Is that too bold to be?
It's not that bold, I don't think. It'd be interesting to see what price he would be if there was other known leaders in the race. And then, personally, I wouldn't be keen to back him. Knowing that, I think he's a lot better horse with control and sort of just doing his own thing, so to speak. But, I actually think he's been beaten now first up the last 3 times. He has been first up, all of the 1,000 metres. So, and I actually think Saturday's performance was probably the best of all those performances. So, and then we sort of know what happened sort of further on to his preps in those preparations. He obviously came good and performed very well. So to me, it's not too big a worrying signs. Obviously now, once he gets second up, I assume maybe he runs in the shorts, which is 1,100 metre race. Now whether Ball of Muscle turns up there or not, I'm not sure. But yeah, sort of all eyes will be on his next run.
Yeah, okay, I might be getting a little bit harsh. If Ball of Muscle does turn up next run, is Nature Strip, if they want to go handlebars down, they can lead Ball of Muscle, can't they?
I would have thought so, yeah, but it's whether, I suppose, how desperate they would be on Ball of Muscle that they could even try and ride it along. And plus, well, the thing with Nature Strip is he's better off drawn out wide because he's not that sort of brilliant horse out of the gates. He can have a few issues in the gates. So if Ball of Muscle's drawn inside him, he's going to have to obviously cross it to lead. Whereas if it's the other way round and Nature Strip could find the fence, and that might cause Ball of Muscle to be ridden a bit more conservatively.
Okay. You've talked me around. I'm not going to totally give up on it from the Everest off that effort, but I'm a little bit more wary than, I don't know, everyone seems to be talking about it's a good thing it got beat because we're going to get a better price in the Everest. I think this is going to be a ripper race, the Everest. We don't get paid by Racing New South Wales like some seem to be for mentioning it, but it's obviously the race that's capturing the attention for all the sprinters, so it's worth talking about. But enough Sydney, I've had enough going the other way. Let's talk about Flemington coming up this week because the races are really hotting up. We saw the nominations for the Makybe Diva, and it looks like an absolute ripper race. First of all, let's get some weather watch from you, Balls. You've been nailing what's ahead for the last few weeks and predicting how the tracks are going to play as well, which has been excellent. What can we expect this week from Flemington?
Yep, so had a quick look at the weather and all was looking good, sort of trickling down, having a look. Yeah, fine weather, looking good. No rain. Get to Saturday and we've got some rain, so that's a bit disappointing. Sort of 5 to 10 mils forecast at the moment, but I think the big thing, given the forecast at the moment, is there's a northerly wind 25 to 40 kilometres per hour forecast, which at Flemington, a northerly wind is a headwind around that sort of big sweeping home turn. So generally, particularly say from the 1400 metre shoot and even, I suppose, the other races, you want to get cover, ideally, particularly if the wind gets up to sort of around that 40 kilometre mark. For the straight races, generally, a northerly doesn't have too much effect on them. So it should be fine there. But yeah, definitely for those doing form for Flemington Saturday, definitely keep an eye on the weather and particularly the wind. I'm sure racing.com and various other social media channels will be all over it, but it's definitely something you'll need to factor in when doing the form if the forecast remains the status quo.
Excellent. Now, if you are a bit lost on the wind, Balls has got you covered with the past episodes here on the Outside Fence. It feels like we've been talking about the wind every week, and it has been that important. The Makybe Diva, we're looking at names like Russian Camelot, Fierce Impact, Kingswood Dream, Vow and Declare, the Cup winner, Dallas Sands coming to Melbourne, Perfect Jewel, Cascadian, and another horse that we got a question in from Zach. I'm not sure if he was watching a few weeks ago, but he wants to know what we think of Master of Wine and his chances in this race. Now, I was pretty savage on its first up effort, Master of Wine, so you won't find me coming into him in a Makybe Diva. Are you as savage as me, Balls?
I was a bit more forgiving than you. He was obviously at first up caught wide no cover in that race in Sydney and sort of was only fair at best. So he's obviously come to Melbourne now. I think my comments after that race were I'd like to have another look at him when he's second up at a mile. So he's second up at a mile here on Saturday. He's definitely a horse that I'll have respect for in the race. But, I'll be interested to see how he goes. And obviously if he performs well, then he's back on track. If he only performs fairly again, then it's probably start to get worried about his spring preparation.
Okay, I'm starting to lose my tag as the most forgiving person in racing with you giving all these chances away, Balls. He won't be getting any of mine this week, Zach. You'll probably get some of yours. I know you like to splash the chips around a bit. There's some other good races as well at Flemington. We got the Danehill Stakes for the 3-year-olds. That's was that the old Ascot Vale?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's sort of, I suppose they flipped them around a bit, and I think it's the Ascot Vale now. The Ascot Vale's the Coolmore, and it's a 1,200 metre race for 3-year-olds down the straight at Flemington.
Beauty. We've also got another race down the straight, the Bobby Lewis. We might see the Gun Tassie sprinter, The Inevitable, going there, so I'm looking forward to that. And we've got the Let's Elope Stakes. That's 1,400 Group 2 for the mares. Now, this is a horse I want to talk about just before we clock off here, Balls. Arcadia Queen went back to the jump outs. Saw a few people raving about what she did there. but now she's coming to mare's grade and not the Makybe Diva. What do we make of that?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. I think most people expected it to be in the Makybe Diva and Perfect Jewel would be in the Let's Elope. Now, Perfect Jewel was obviously very impressive, winning last week at 1,200 metres. It might be a sign that Perfect Jewel's completely flying, so they want to run it in the Makybe Diva and split these two up. Or the fact that they think Arcadia Queen's probably better suited to 1,400 at this stage, given that she missed that run in the Memsey and I assume has missed a bit of work as well with those feet problems. As far as how she goes, it's going to be a very hard horse to assess on the weekend. Obviously, I assume she'll be sort of the best performed horse in the Let's Elope. You've either, I suppose, got to trust that the stable have got her back to her best, or even somewhat her best. It'd be interesting. She could maybe even run up to her Lawrence run, or even just a little bit better than that, not far off it, and maybe win the Let's Elope, depending obviously who else is in the race. But obviously, it'd be a significant drop in class back to mare's grade for her compared to what she usually runs in. So, she's obviously a most interesting runner on Saturday.
Yeah, it's going to be a big guessing game with her. I think Arcadia Queen, and that's what the punt's all about, isn't it? Making sometimes we have to guess a bit. So,
well, the thing is, it's going to be depending on her price and obviously what you're prepared to take. Factoring in that there's obviously some risk there that she's not the horse she was, or she's not quite 100%.
Yeah, very interesting indeed. Look forward to Flemington. Balls, thank you as always for all your hard work and time you've put in. This was a great show. Thank you very much. If you want to follow Balls on Twitter, there he is there at SGBrown102. You can follow me. You can follow Teach Me Horse Racing at Teach Me H Racing. If you want to learn a bit more on the punt, learn some of the basics, whatever else, get over to teachmehorsracing.com and check out what they've got on offer there. Until next week, thanks for everyone for all the questions. If you like the show, subscribe down the bottom there. Give us a like. Give us some love on Twitter. It's all much appreciated. Keep an eye on the Twitter channel. Actually, we put a few clips out and we're starting to ramp that up a bit as well. Thank you, Balls. We'll see you next week, and thanks to everyone for watching.
Thanks, F.